Tonight, there is intense fighting on two fronts in the war against the Islamic terrorist group known as ISIS. The U.S. is continuing to pound ISIS targets from the air along the border of Turkey and Syria. ISIS is threatening to take the Syrian town of Kobani there. In Iraq, ISIS militants are west of Baghdad. They already control much of northern Iraq. We have a team of correspondents covering these developments. Holly Williams is in Istanbul, Turkey. Elizabeth Palmer in Baghdad. David Martin is always at the Pentagon. Holly, the Turkish government has made a lot of noise about this siege of Kobani, but are they going to send their own troops in over the border?
Well, Scott, the Turkish foreign minister said today that was unrealistic. And it's very clear that the Turkish do not want to go it alone on the ground in Syria. But if Kobani does fall to ISIS, despite intense US-led airstrikes in that area, then that is strategically key because the town lies right on Syria's 500-mile-long border with Turkey, and that border is a conduit for smuggled weapons and fighters.
Liz Palmer, you're in Baghdad. How close is ISIS to the capital there?
Very close, Scott. The closest point is in an outer suburb called Abu Ghraib. That's just 8 miles from Baghdad International Airport. And then there are ISIS units dotted all around the city, from the north right around through the west to the south, constantly fighting with the Iraqi military and also being bombed from the air by the coalition. And then finally, there are cells operating inside the city responsible for almost daily bombings.
Holly, let me bring you back in and ask both of you this question. How much of a difference are the U.S. and allied airstrikes making?
Well, Scott, they certainly didn't stop the militants' advance on Kobani. And also, Scott, many people in this region, and that includes Turkey's leaders, are angry that while ISIS is being targeted with airstrikes, the Syrian regime, which has indiscriminately bombed its own people, is not.
And Liz, how effective are the airstrikes there in Iraq?
An Iraqi officer tells us that they are helping to clear a buffer zone around the capital. That said, there are 60,000 Iraqi forces assigned to protect Baghdad, and there are terrible problems with poor leadership and corruption. So it's really not clear if there were a real ISIS offensive, how they do.
And David Martin, what is the Pentagon making of all this?
Well, the biggest concern right now is stopping the ISIS advance west of Baghdad. The Iraqi army is not fighting well there, and as a result, the airstrikes are having a limited impact. The U.S. is gearing up to train a Syrian opposition force, but recruiting for that force has not even begun yet. So, in the interim, the U.S. is going to ask Arab countries to put their own special forces into Syria to serve as at least the beginnings of a ground force there.
David Martin, Liz Palmer, Holly Williams, thanks very much.